Hello, friends. Welcome back. My name is Whitley, and today we're going to talk about all of the books that I read in March. March was a pretty great reading month for me. I still unfortunately haven't gotten a 5-star since the very first read of the year, which was When the Wolf Comes Home, but the majority of the books that I read were 4 stars. They were absolute wins, and I never got below a 3. So hey, I consider that a win. A very successful reading month. If you're interested in seeing statistics, here are mine for the month of March. I love seeing everyone's statistics, so I love seeing mine as well. I managed to read 10 books in March. I read 3,289 pages, which is a really great month for me. And my average rating was 3.85. Again, such a great reading month. The majority of the reads were 4 stars, which is fantastic. I read over a bunch of different genres this month as well. I am also doing better at reading more series, which was a big goal for me in 2026. I finally read more series than I did standalones in this month. It also makes me really happy to see all of my charts down at the bottom be the exact same. It tickles my brain. I love it. I feel like I was on fire last month. It's rare that I hit double digits in the number of books I read, but I got 10 last month, so pretty proud of myself. But without further ado, let's get into the books that I read in March. I am going to go from least favorite to most favorite. With that tier ranking in mind, the first book that I'm going to talk about is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. There is this cafe in a back alley in Tokyo where patrons are able to travel through time, but in a very specific and rule-intensive way. First, you have to sit in one exact seat. You can't get up from that seat. You can't leave the cafe, and you have to return before your coffee gets cold. This follows 4 different people's journey taking advantage of this time-traveling cafe for a menagerie of reasons, whether it be comfort, closure, apologies, or second chances. I mean, no matter what you do, nothing that you do when you are in this other time will affect the present at all, no matter what. So you would think that it is a little meaningless, but it's not about changing the outcome. It is about changing your view of the outcome and, I don't know, changing yourself and your perspective. This was decent. I liked the themes for sure of healing and grief. I also liked that we got these 4 individual stories, but all of the characters were present throughout the entire book. So we kind of got to see the aftermath of how the time travel affected their future. And we got little updates from everybody, which was nice. However, I just didn't find the story very engaging. I found it to be a little repetitive and over-explanatory at a lot of just mundane things. They went on for paragraphs about the weather or what people were wearing, but we never got any real characterization or personality, in my opinion, in any of the characters. So even though they are going through these really difficult times, I never really connected with that. It never really made me feel what I think it was supposed to make me feel. That's not to say that this book didn't make me feel anything. I mean, there definitely was this such heartfelt subject matter. I just never really cared about the characters. But I mean, if you have ever lost someone in your life, you can absolutely relate to their struggle and difficulties with, just wanting to see that person one more time, but then knowing that if you see them, you're going to have to say goodbye again, and that heartbreak that comes with that, and knowing that nothing that you do is going to change the present. I also found it a bit grating and a little annoying that it was a common theme throughout every single one of these stories that these women were giving pieces of themselves away to the other people in their life. Was it because these women were written by a man? Was it because the cultural difference in gender roles and familial obligations are just so different there? I don't know. I just know that it was really sad to see these women. They were, content with where they were, especially one. I can't get into it for spoilers, but I don't know. I just felt like these women were giving up so much of themselves for the people that they cared about, even though it felt like they didn't want to, like they were satisfied with where they were, but they felt obligation and they felt like they had to do this thing that they didn't want to do for the person that they cared about. I don't know. A bit of a disappointment, to be honest, especially with how much hype this seems to get and how excited I was about the premise of this book. Overall, a very mid book. I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. Next, we have Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the finale of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Grishaverse trilogy. This is a young adult fantasy with a sprinkle of romance that follows Alina. She awakens this long buried power inside of her to save her best friend when her best friend and their regimen goes into the Fold. The Fold is like this slash of darkness in this land that is filled with monsters, and to save her best friend's life, this power awakens within her. And once it is discovered that she has this power, she is whisked away to be trained by and with the Grisha, which are this world's, magically capable people. And she is whisked away by the leader of the Grisha, which is the Darkling. She goes through her training, and through so many trials and tribulations, she keeps becoming more powerful and powerful. She has been beaten. She has been betrayed. She has been heartbroken, but she is this nation's only hope for ending this war that she has found herself in the middle of and eradicating this Fold, this darkness. Shadow and Bone, loved it. Siege and Storm, not a fan. I had such high hopes for this one, but this one fell more towards how I felt about Siege and Storm. It did land somewhere in between those in enjoyment. The romance has been a very weak point for me throughout the entire series, but I think this one did. I feel like I connected with the romance in this one the most, even though it still wasn't great. The plot was a bit more interesting in this than the second one, and I found the twist at the end to, be a little gimmicky. And I did continue to like a lot of our characters, even though the characters that I most connected with and that I most enjoyed were side characters. I really liked our main character, Alina, in the first book, but I feel like, instead of character development like you want to see throughout a series, she was just so wishy-washy the entire series. I felt like throughout the entire series, nothing really happens. Like there's so much planning and buildup for what I found to be, unfortunately, a very unsatisfying and, when you think of an ending conclusion of the end of a trilogy, you think of this like huge battle and this epic conclusion, but I just did not get that out of this. It was a little unsatisfying. I don't know if it was because I never really felt any connection to these characters, but I felt the final battle, you want these huge stakes, and I just felt like it was such low stakes. I felt like there was no tension in this final battle, and that is not what you want in an epic conclusion. That's not to say that the writing was bad. I do see the potential of me being able to enjoy other works from Leigh Bardugo. I don't know. I should have looked. I don't know if this is her debut trilogy. I think it is. So I am hopeful that I am moving on to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which I'm very excited about. I am hopeful that I will enjoy those, even though I didn't really enjoy these. And like I said, I really enjoyed the first book. The series overall, especially Siege and Storm, and this one just didn't do it for me. I gave this one 3 stars as well. I gave Shadow and Bone 4.5 stars. Amazing. I gave Siege and Storm a 2.75 to 3, and then I gave this a 3 as well. So overall, the series was a 3.5. I also read the 2 novellas that are in this trilogy because they are included in the editions of my books. The Tailor, which follows, oh my gosh, what's her name? I cannot remember her name. Genya. I didn't even see it in the book. Genya. The Tailor follows Genya and kind of how she came to be in the Darkling services. And then there was the Demon in the Woods, which is a kind of prequel to the Darkling. The Tailor was okay. Really enjoyed Demon in the Wood. Overall, though, I am just happy to be done with it, if I'm being honest. I'm so excited to move on to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Those books were absolutely the like carrot dangling in front of me to get me to finish these books. If it wasn't for knowing that I should finish the series before moving on to Six of Crows, I probably would have DNF'd at Siege and Storm. But I have heard that Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom is worth the bit of unsatisfying journey that I just went on. So fingers crossed. Next, we have Below by Laurel Hightower. This is a little horror novella about a woman named Addie. She's recently divorced and she is on a road trip on her way to meet some friends to go to this horror convention. And this little road trip just happens to take her through some back roads of West Virginia. On one of these back roads, she sees something a little unexplainable, and she's understandably a little shaken up. So she stops at this truck stop and this little like late night diner to try to pull herself together. There she meets a seemingly very nice truck driver who saw a little bit of the strange occurrence that she saw as well. So he's kind of shaken up a little bit as well. And that leads him to tell her about this section of road. Him being a truck driver, he drives through here all the time. And he tells her that this place is known for its weird occurrences. There's always like weird electrical problems. After hearing his, creepy little story, and on top of what she saw earlier, being creeped out, she does hesitantly accept this offer of help from the truck driver on the next leg of the journey. And on top of all this, it's begun to snow. Her night vision sucks anyway, so she thinks it would be nice to not have to do this next leg of the journey alone. But her night takes quite the turn. Started out bad, ends up even worse when the truck in front of her, the nice truck driver, ends up veering off the road, off a bridge, and into this huge, deep ravine. And now she has to make the decision of whether she is going to, hightail it and just leave him there, this nice man that decided to help her for no reason, or is she going to go down into this darkness, this ominous darkness, to try to see if she can help? And that is where the show starts. This was so fast paced. I did not want to put this down. You could definitely finish this in one sitting. I think it's like 106 pages. The atmosphere was so creepy, so chilling. It was giving like a psychedelic version of The Descent. It's a bit fever dreamy. You never really know if what Addie is seeing is real or if she's just having these like stress induced hallucinations, which I absolutely loved. I really enjoyed Addie's transformation that she makes throughout this book. She's really trying to rediscover who she is without her ex-husband, in her ear all of the time, bossing her around, making all of her decisions for her. And she's so down on herself, the first half of this book, never really believing herself to be capable of anything because that's what she's always been told. And, it really goes to show that you don't really know what you're capable of until, you're forced to find out. And I just loved seeing her prove to herself that she is so much stronger than she thought she was. She starts out as this, meek, self-conscious little being. And by the end, I won't spoil anything, but I really enjoyed seeing her development throughout her transformation of sorts. And I also loved all of the like feminine themes in this. I also love this author's writing. I knew that from reading her other book, Crossroads. Unfortunately, this one didn't hit quite as hard as Crossroads did, but I still really enjoyed the writing in this. There was some really creepy imagery and scenes in this, and I was just eating it up. I was racing through these pages. Like there were some gory sections, but then there were also some sections that made you feel like the hair on the back of your neck stand up. It was really good. A little fun fact about me. I think the Smile films are some of the scariest movies that I have personally ever seen. Maybe not out there, but for me, scariest movies I've ever seen in my life. And there was a character in this book that was extremely Smile coded, and I hated him because he unsettled me so much, but I also loved him because he unsettled me so much. I will say this was a bit over the top. You definitely have to kind of suspend your disbelief in this one. I know that might sound a little strange, me saying that about a horror book about Mothman, but I don't know, I just wanted a little more, especially when it came to this Mothman character. Like he's never named Mothman, but he's clearly Mothman. And I'm not one that needs answers and everything kind of tied up in a bow, but there were definitely some questions that I had by the end of this that I wish we got answers to that we just didn't. But I still really enjoyed this, and I would recommend it if you're looking for a good, fast-paced little horror novella that is weird, super creepy, and a little creature feature. I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This is an epic sci-fi fantasy start of the series that has a complete, complex world of its own, and it has this unique magic system that is rooted in elemental magic. This follows a woman named Asun. Asun lives an ordinary life. She lives in this small town with her family where no one knows her past or her power, but everything changes one day when multiple things happen at once. First, this massive quake, this shake, this crack opens up in the earth in the nation's capital, and it begins to spew ash. This ash covers the sky, and it creates this ash cloud that could last for centuries. And a little bit closer to home, Esun has also found that her husband has brutally murdered her son and kidnapped her daughter. This sends her on a rescue mission across what is now a deadly wasteland that is the Stillness in search of her daughter. And meanwhile, we're also following these two other perspectives, both Origins, I think is how you pronounce it, Origins. And they are these powerful beings. And through their perspectives, we really see what it means to be an Origin in this world. Origins are these earthbenders of sorts. In this world, they call it the Stillness as like irony because this earth is constantly moving, and these Origins are employed and dispersed and hired out to kind of quell and quiet the shaking and the quakes that could happen. But because they are so powerful, they are also feared. Origins are to be controlled. They're to be contained. They're to be under constant surveillance. Most Origins live at the Fulcrum, which is this nation's capital of sorts, I guess. It's in the capital, and it is this place where Origins are brought, usually as children, to be trained and raised as these well-mannered, obedient weapons. We really get to see this and learn this through our other two perspectives, which are Damaya and Cyanite. Damaya is a young child who is taken from her home to be brought to the Fulcrum to be trained. Cyanite, however, has worked her way up in the Fulcrum, in the career ladder. She is now on assignment with the most powerful Origin that the Fulcrum has to offer. And their relationship starts very tumultuous and disgusting, honestly, but their dynamic throughout was a really beautiful journey. This was a lot darker than I was expecting it to be. This reflects the real world in such a brutal way when it comes to, racism, discrimination, oppression, and it was infuriating, like seeing the mistreatment of these people simply because of what they were. These characters were so heartbreaking, but I don't know, seeing their resilience and seeing how much care and love that they still had to give, even through everything that they had struggled through, like really left me hopeful at the end. That being said, I'm a bit torn on my pure enjoyment of this one. The writing and the world was masterfully done. Like, I get it, but I'm also not an avid epic high fantasy reader. And throughout the first 50% of this, I did not know what was going on. And even after that, I felt like I never really got a grasp on the actual plot and nuances of this world. This truly is its own extensive world, which is a feat in itself. It's impressive, but with that comes its own, culture, its own customs, its own vocabulary, its own history. And it was just a lot. I was really torn between enjoying learning about all of these, little nuances and this world building, while on the other hand, I spent the entire time questioning if I was missing something. I was also torn between being really intrigued to find out what was going to happen and what was going on. And then on the other hand, I was just kind of a little bored. I honestly feel like I'm missing something. Like, everybody that I have seen that reads this book adores it. And it is so high rated. It's so beloved. And I'm just sitting here like, it was okay. Like, I get that it was very well written, but for pure enjoyment, like, it was mid-tier for me. There were a lot of things that I liked about this book. Do not get me wrong. At the top of the list being how gruesome it was. Like, some of the scenes in here were disturbing, and they crossed the border into like being horror, which I absolutely loved, even though, they were disturbing and infuriating. The characters and the relationships in this book were also something that I really enjoyed. Both the old relationships that were already formed and the new relationships that we get to see forged really resonated with me. There were also a couple of twists in here that had my jaw slack, like on the floor, but they were delivered in such a nonchalant way that I almost had to like step back and like want to reread it. Like, did I hear that right? Like, am I understanding that correctly? I don't know. It was just such a weird way to write such a huge revelation. This whole book, honestly, was just me sitting there trying to convince myself to, trust the process, just keep reading. Let the story unfold, even if you don't understand everything right now. I'm sure everything will make sense in the end. I'm still not 100% sure if it did, but for the most part, I did enjoy it. With that being said, the actual like nuances and certain aspects of the plot, I fear just kind of went over my head. I get the grand scheme of the different races and kind of their like butting of heads, and the want of the Origins freedom is obvious, but I don't know, everything else was just a little fuzzy. I will probably continue the series. I mean, I am intrigued, but I'm not 100% sold. I'm still on the fence. Let me know if you think it's worth it, if you've read the series, if I didn't, quite get the first book, if it is worth continuing. I ended up giving this, I think, a 3.5, verging on more of like a 3.75. With all of the hype and adoration surrounding this, it is hard not to be a little disappointed that I didn't absolutely love it. But this is such a unique, expansive, gruesome at times dystopian fantasy. And if you are thinking about picking it up, don't let my thoughts and slight confusion dissuade you. I also started another series in March. I read Wool by Hugh Howey, which is the first in the Silo series. This actually started as a self-published short story. The first book was broken down into like 5 novellas, but this garnered so much buzz and attention that he actually like traditionally published an entire trilogy. Not only that, there's also a TV show. This series came highly recommended from my husband, Sydney. He has been trying to get me to read this series for the longest, and we were really wanting to watch the TV show, so I decided it was time. After this unknown apocalyptic event hundreds of years ago leaves the surface of the earth uninhabitable, the survivors have been secluded to this massive underground silo that stretches 144 stories. They do have a view of the outside using these cameras and screens all over the silo. So, I mean, they do see this bleak and desolate wasteland every single day. But despite this, they live a fairly comfortable life with their, hydroponic farms and massive generators. So they have everything they need, but, they are secluded. So even with their hierarchy, in place, there are still troublemakers, there's lawbreakers, and there are people that, may want out to see what's really out there. And that is where the cleaners come in. These cameras that show the outside world to the silo get dusty and dirty, and the only way to clean them is by hand. The scientists in the silo have developed this protective suit, but it only lasts long enough for the person to clean the cameras before the radiation becomes too much and starts to seep in and eventually kills the person. And the cleanings are a one-way trip. They will not let you back inside. So if you say you want to go outside, you're going outside and you're not coming back. So this is always done as a sort of punishment. And you would think, well, if they're being punished, why clean? And a lot of people say they're not going to clean, but they have never had an instance where someone didn't clean in the history of the silo. Speaking of the history of the silo, apparently like 140 years ago, there was this huge rebellion that the higher ups have told everyone resulted in the destruction of their entire history. Since then, the silo's main concern is always to maintain order. I know that was a lot, but now that the stage is set, we can get into our characters. And this book follows a lot of them throughout the journey at one time or another. But our main protagonist is a woman named Jules. She is a mechanic from the down deep, and we really follow her and her friends and her enemies as she tries to uncover the secrets of the silo. Like, why are they here? Who put them there? How does every single person that starts to ask questions end up dying by a suicide exactly like her lover years ago did? The constant paranoia and mystery of what is really going on in this silo was so intriguing, even through some of the admittedly slower parts of the book. I loved our girl Jules. She is tough as nails. She is this mechanical prodigy. She is basically like single-handedly keeping this silo operational by fixing everything that breaks. She's loving, she's loyal, she's confident, but she also is, brutally honest. She takes zero shit. And I just really enjoyed following this journey with her and as she discovered these revelations of the silo. And it's so easy to root for her, especially against these like really unlikable villains. I will say, with so many characters, especially in the second half of the book, they don't hold as much emotional weight as you would expect from a character that you are getting a POV from. Like, you care about them because Jules cares about them, but because their only real purpose is to kind of show us what is going on in different parts of the silo, and they weren't already established characters. Like, we are just meeting them, a lot of them, for the first time when we start to get their POV. You're expected to care when they trudge headlong into battle. But since they weren't already like established characters that we met and knew and cared about, we don't get much characterization and we don't get much like connection with them. It's hard to kind of care when they are in these really tense moments. With that being said, I did enjoy those other perspectives that we got because I did enjoy seeing what was going on in the other parts of the silo, kind of what everyone was struggling with through this battle. Even if I didn't feel like emotionally connected or attached to these characters, they were still so easy to root for and to empathize with. And even though we have this very isolated setting, this world honestly felt so vast and so fleshed out. There were so many little like intricacies and rules to this world and their lifestyle, especially with getting so many different perspectives, even with, the first half of this really setting up this, huge rule heavy how this world works and how this lifestyle works. There was still so much to reveal and to learn about what is actually going on in this silo. If you're familiar with the Fallout game or the TV show now as well, it was definitely like Fallout coded, while also maintaining, like, I know that there are a lot of similarities with the like underground bunker and the radiation outside, but this still felt so fresh and unique. I will say the writing style, I feel, was a little bit unnecessarily descriptive, which made it slow at times. I think this could have been broken down and been a little bit shorter, but I do think it did a great job at, painting this silo and these lifestyles in an easily imaginable way, if not a little mundanely. But the mystery, every little reveal that we got, and the constantly building tension and unrest that we got was enough to constantly propel the story forward. I ended up giving this 4 stars. It probably is more accurately closer to a 3.75. Overall, I did enjoy it, and I do plan on continuing the series. I'm not sure when, it's not something that I'm like super itching to pick up, although Sydney does say that the second one is probably his favorite, which I mean does make me want to pick it up a little bit more. It was also really fun to talk to Sydney throughout my reading progress, and every day he'd be like, where are you at? What's happening? Because even though he read this years ago, he remembers everything. Of course he does. And it was just really fun to talk to him throughout it as well. We're actually going to start the TV show soon because seasons 1 and 2 cover only book 1. So we can go ahead and start the show, even though I'm not planning on picking up the second one immediately. So I'm really excited about that as well. It kind of felt, I don't know, even though I don't really read old school fantasy or sci-fi, it felt like old school sci-fi fantasy. If you like dystopian, if you like mystery, you know, a slow, steady build, I would say I recommend this one. Next, we have Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fito. Fito? I don't know. This is a divisive little horror book about a woman in Victorian time who is hired on as the new governess for the Pound family. A governess is pretty much kind of like a nanny, a teacher, someone to look after the children. This woman is a little crazy, and by a little crazy, I mean she thinks that she has a monster, a demon inside of her, and the more time that she spends with these children and with these family, the harder that her dark compulsions, her dark impulses are to control, if she even had any control to begin with. There's honestly not a lot I can say about the plot with this being so short and so kooky banana strange. We basically just follow this troubled, deranged woman, Winifred Naughty, I think her name is. I almost called her Fred. If you've read the book, you know. But we're basically just following her, caring for these children, stalking the halls of Ensor House, and really just wreaking havoc. This was honestly such a good time. I had so much fun with this. That's weird to say about such a gory, weird book, but it was so much fun. It was so over the top. It was dark. It was funny. It was absurd, but I really enjoyed it. Virginia's writing is beautiful, but I did listen to this on audio, and I did notice that I would have to find myself rewinding a little bit at certain paragraphs that I wasn't quite comprehending what she was saying. And that's just a little tiny complaint of the kind of lush writing style that we got in this. Don't get me wrong, I did like it, but I did have to end up just slowing the audiobook down a little bit. I usually listen at about a 1.75, and I think I slowed this down to like a 1.5 or like a 1.4. I honestly think I would have had better luck with this one. I mean, I say better luck like I didn't enjoy it. Like I really enjoyed it, but I think I would have enjoyed it even a little bit more if I could have had it like physically and read it with my eyeballs. But again, a very small complaint in the grand scheme of things. The atmosphere was that, you know, gothic, eerie creepiness that you would expect from an old Victorian house, and it was so good. The tone was overall really like humorous and nonchalant, which is in stark contrast to the actual content, which was like disgusting, gory, disturbed. Winifred's shenanigans that she got up to were definitely savage. So definitely check your trigger warnings if you're thinking about picking this one up. While her actions were dark and twisted, they were also so out of pocket and over the top. So, I mean, you definitely have to suspend your disbelief in this one, but I don't find that to be a detriment to this book, especially with how like flippant the writing was. This book doesn't take itself too seriously, and I loved that about it. The ending of this book, phenomenal. Chef's kiss, so gruesome, so good. However, the overall plot and storyline of this did feel a little disjointed. A lot of things, you know, felt kind of random. There were these big like shock value moments, but as a complete story, I feel like it did fall a little bit short as a cohesive narration. Overall, I really enjoyed it. I had a fun, silly, goofy time with it. I would recommend it if you like horror that is really over the top, you know, out of pocket, absurd. And this book was a lot funnier than I thought it would be, which is weird with some of the content in this, but that is just kind of another thing that I loved about it. It didn't take itself too seriously. It was the tone was just humorous throughout, even with some of the grotesque stuff that we get, some of the scenes. It also had a good little twist at the end. Overall, really enjoyed it. 4 stars. Next, we have Mixed Signals by B.K. Borison. This is the 3rd installment in the Lovelight series. This one follows Lovelight Farms' baker Layla and Caleb. We have met him previously. He was the deputy to the sheriff, but now he is a substitute Spanish teacher at the middle school. Weird career change, but okay. In the previous books, we've seen Caleb, and he has a pretty obvious crush on Layla, although she doesn't really seem to notice him in that way or really find him attractive until the start of this book and the event that kind of kicks off this book, which is she is going on tons of terrible dates, and one of these dates leads her to a bar where she sees Caleb, and he is there with his brother, I think, and they're having a birthday party. And she gets left by this guy, and Caleb is having none of it. He's like, let me take you home. And on this ride home, they get to talking about how both of their, dating histories is really terrible. And Caleb comes up with this idea that maybe, we should date. Maybe we can go on some dates. You can give me some pointers, because he thinks that he moves too fast. He feels like he comes on a little bit too strong. So he is wanting some pointers on how to be a good date. And he is wanting to show Layla what she gets out of it is he wants to show her what dates should be like and what she deserves in a relationship. But of course, we can't have a fake dating arrangement without a termination date. That termination date is 1 month. They're going to date each other for 1 month, and then they are going to take what they have learned from each other and hopefully go out and find what they are looking for. But it's seeming that the more time that they spend together, what they might be looking for is a lot closer than they thought. This might be my favorite in the Lovelight series so far. This was so sweet. It was so adorable. It was precious, and it had this series like lovely small town vibes, and B.K. Borison's humor is just so effortless. It's so good. I absolutely adored both of our characters. It's rare, I feel, that we get a sunshine pairing, and it was just so cute. They were both so genuine and loving and goofy, and I just love them so much, especially Caleb. He was quite literally the definition of just the cutest little cinnamon roll, but also like he was not afraid to, stand up and tell Layla what she needed to hear. Even with it being like so cute and so lighthearted, it did still have those like more serious themes. I mean, their fears and their insecurities were so relatable. I absolutely loved getting the little glimpses of the other couples that we met. Like seeing these 3 best friends run this farm together was so precious. The way that they really are just like this little family, and they are always there for each other, is so endearing. This book honestly didn't have very much plot, but somehow I didn't miss it much. I mean, yes, there were these like internal struggles that we had in these characters, and Layla went on a little bit of like a side quest with her bakery, but 95% of this was just us spending time with these 2 characters, and I really enjoyed it. And this honestly didn't even feel like a normal fake dating trope. Like I feel like with most fake dating, they're doing it for other people, like they're only doing it in front of other people. But in this, they're really just kind of using it as a barrier, both to not get too close and as like well, this isn't a real relationship, so I can just like say whatever I want, which ultimately like made them grow closer. And this barrier felt like it very quickly evaporated. And it just felt like these 2 were genuinely dating, even though the small town rumors were so cute, and they were very adamantly declining, saying we are not dating. But I mean, they clearly were. I will say because of that, it didn't feel like we got a lot of tension. I mean, we got a little bit, but this book felt a lot more like light and fluffy. I felt like this book was like a cup of hot chocolate on a winter day. It was comforting. It was sweet and just the right amount of steamy. Speaking of steam, these steamy scenes in this book were immaculate. I loved that there was discussions about what each other liked, and I feel like almost every woman can, relate to some of the struggles that Layla was having. And I just thought it was so relatable and so real. This had me giggling. I was constantly smiling throughout the entire book, and I just cannot recommend this series enough if you like sweet, lighthearted, cute little romances. I gave this 4 stars. It's probably more like a 4.25, but 4 stars. Loved it. Next, we have The Har by David Sodergren, my very first David Sodergren, but certainly not my last. This follows a spitfire of an 84-year-old woman. She lives in this Scottish fishing village, and she was born there. She was raised there, and she is adamant that she's going to die there. This is her home, but this peaceful little idyllic village turns into a bit of a war zone when this rich American comes in, and he is planning to buy up all the land so he can raise it and build something for the rich. I think it's a golf course. Muriel is watching her friends disappear one by one as they move away. They are all, succumbing to what they feel is the inevitability of the eradication of their home to this golf course, and they are taking the offers to sell their homes while they are being offered it. They're taking the money and running, but not Muriel. She refuses. This woman is not leaving her home. It does not matter how much money she is offered, and it does not matter how miserable they try to make her. And misery they do bring. They make this place awful to live at. That is until Muriel finds something on the beach, and this something offers her some help. This strange being whose power seems to only be limited by their appetite, and together, adorably together, these two begin to fight back against these invaders. I absolutely loved all of our characters, especially Muriel and what did she call him? I don't remember what she calls the Har, but it is so good. The setting, the atmosphere. Muriel was such a lovable character. I loved being in her head, and I loved that we got this story from an older protagonist. She was so easy to empathize with and to root for, especially against such infuriating, awful villains. The gentrification of this land was infuriating. I cannot get over how atmospheric this was, but it was also romantic. It was gruesome. There were so many different elements in this, but I feel like it meshed them so well. I mean, we got revenge. We got a love story. We got grief. We got some unexplainable fantasy elements, all while it just rained blood around us. There were some aspects in this that I felt were a little over the top, but overall, I very much enjoyed this one. If you don't mind a terrorizer amount of blood and you want a short little horror, I highly recommend this one. I was very impressed with my first David Sodergren, and like I said, I will definitely be picking up more from him. I ended up giving this 4 stars, more like a 4.25, but really enjoyed. The penultimate, The Measure by Nikki Ehrlich. This was a little sci-fi, a little literary. One morning, out of nowhere, every single human on the earth receives a box at their residence, whatever that may be. And this box says the measure of your life lies within. Every box contains a piece of string, and that string length corresponds to the length that your life is going to be. This book shows how the world reacts to this crazy phenomenon, and we follow how the world changes through the eyes of these 8 individual stories. We also get their personal relationships with their own boxes and how they are dealing with this aftermath. This was such an interesting character study, not only of our, 8 individuals that we actually follow in here, but seeing how the entire world reacted to this. Some people obviously chose to look, and some people chose not to look and pretend that nothing had ever changed. And there were different countries that were passing these different laws that were maybe forcing people to look or forcing people not to look. This felt like such a believable series of events. The way that your string length became just another thing to be judged for and discriminated against for. The way the politicians swooped in and fed on these people's fears and prejudices felt, unfortunately, all too real. And I know that this is kind of some people's realities. Like if you are diagnosed with a terminal illness, the enormous grief that you must have for like the time that you know you're no longer going to have. But to have it be like an absolute certainty in this, it was just so interesting to see how so many different people reacted. Not just the people with short strings either, like seeing how the long string people decided that, oh, since I have a long string, I can't die. So they're just going to go out and like do whatever they want, even though like people are saying like, just because you know you're not going to die doesn't mean you can't hurt yourself. I think that this is honestly like a perfect book club book. Even though Sydney didn't read it with me, I found that we were just sitting there, because I tell him all about my books, and we were just sitting there talking about this for the longest time. We were like contemplating, and that's what this book makes you do. You sit there and contemplate like what you would do in the situation and how you think you would react to such a life-changing moment like this. There are just so many things that you can like pick apart and so many things to take from this. This was such a unique story and I really enjoyed it. Even with all of its, very heavy themes, it does leave you with this feeling of hopefulness. Of course, it's nothing new. This age-old adage of, be thankful for every single day that you have because you never know how much time you have left. Even though there is this underlying mystery of kind of where the boxes came from, who sent them, how do they know, that wasn't what the story was about. This was very much about these characters and about how the world reacted to this phenomenon. And I'm sometimes not a huge fan of like a lot of POVs, but I feel like this did such a great job of distinguishing every single voice. And I loved how at the end, like all of these characters ended up intertwined some way or another. I will say, even though I very much enjoyed every single one of the perspectives and stories that we got, I never really felt like emotionally attached or connected to any of the characters, even though they're so easy to root for and empathize with. I mean, other than the one that I feel like is there to hate, like you're not supposed to root for him. Speaking of, I didn't realize how political this book was going to be. So if that's not your jam, maybe, be cautious that it is a very prevalent theme in this book. So if you are thinking of picking that up, just take that into consideration. But otherwise, I absolutely recommend this. I gave this 4.5 stars. Overall, I was exceptionally impressed at this debut novel. And I would love to pick up more from this author. I know that she has one other one that has released. I don't remember what it's called. Something about poppy fields, I think. But I am absolutely adding that to my TBR. After loving this so much, this was thought-provoking. It was unique, so fresh, and I loved it. And lastly, we have Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is the final installment in the Crimson Moth duology, which follows Rune, who is a renegade witch on an island that has outlawed magic. Witches are being eradicated. They are hunted down and executed. By day, she is a normal socialite, but by night, she is the Crimson Moth, a renegade witch who is helping other witches evade capture and even escape custody. And in an attempt to gather information on an important witch that has been captured, she decides to try to romance the captain of the witch hunters. Gideon, however, has been hunting the Crimson Moth for the past 2 years, and when he finds out that Rune might have some information on the Crimson Moth, he decides to take advantage of her recent interest and try to romance her right back to get his own information. I can't get into much of the plot of this one without spoiling the end of the last book, but I will tell you that this was phenomenal. It was just as good as the first one. I loved that we still got some of that enemies to lovers in this one, because the ending of the last one, definitely did not wrap up as, they're in a happy relationship now. However, the lack of communication, even though it is, understandable and realistic with these two being, mortal enemies, was just a touch annoying. Like, just talk to each other, be honest with each other. I mean, I get that the other person wouldn't have thought, like, if Gideon said something he knew Rune wasn't going to believe him, and vice versa. Like, even if they would have talked to each other, like I said, it is understandable because they don't trust each other, so they wouldn't have been believed. But, you know, if they would have just talked to each other, you know, this could have been solved. I also loved the internal struggles of both of the characters in this. In the beginning, Rune is in a really tough place. She is caught in between having to make this decision between what is the lesser of these two terrible evils. And I loved seeing Gideon's development, him really start to let go of his previous prejudices and start to question his loyalty to the Bloodguard and what they were doing. The Bloodguard is the witch hunters. The chemistry and the banter were still grade A fantastic. We even got a little bit more of the fake dating trope in this, which is always a good time. I really enjoyed how everything was wrapped up in this, even though some of the aspects were like immediately predictable. Overall, a phenomenal duology that I am so happy to have finally read and gotten around to. I gave this one 4.5 stars as well. I gave the first one a 4.5 star as well. So a 4.5 star duology. Love to see it. If you like an enemies to lovers fantasy romance, highly recommend. And now for the superlatives of the month. First off, I mean, because of how I decided to order the books in this, you already know the answer to this, but my favorite book of the month was Rebel Witch by Kristen Ciccarelli. The best audiobook that I listened to was probably The Har by David Sodergren. I absolutely loved her little Scottish accent, and the narrator did such a good job at both doing like the older Scottish lady and the strange being that we got. And we can't talk about the best without talking about the least best, which was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. What book will I be recommending most? I think the most widely recommendable book was The Measure by Nikki Erlich. Biggest surprise, I think, was probably Victorian Psycho. I really had no idea what this was going into it, and it was such a fun, goofy time. Biggest disappointment, this one was a little hard. Sadly, I had a couple of little disappointing reads, but the most disappointing, I think, has to go to Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. Most beautiful cover. A bit of an unconventional pick, I think, but I have to go with Below by Laurel Hightower. It's stunning. And the hardest question of all of the superlatives is my new favorite character. I think I'm gonna have to go with Caleb from Mixed Signals. He was just the sweetest little bean. He was such a cinnamon roll, but he also knew like exactly what he wanted, and he knew what his partner deserved, and he was determined to provide them no less. What a great reading month. I feel like I was on fire last month. Like 10 books? Who is she? If you missed my winter wrap up, if you want to know all of the other books that I have read so far this year, I will link it up above and down below. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were, or if you don't know what to say and just want to leave me an emoji, leave me any of the dessert emojis for Caleb and Mixed Signals. While you're down there, don't forget to like the video if you liked it and subscribe if you want to see more from me in the future. I hope you are loving what you are reading lately. Stay safe out there, and I will see you soon for another video. Bye, friends.
Before you go, then make me. You didn't think I'd be here waiting up all night, all night. I'm here to tell you something. There ain't another love that is gonna hold you down like mine.